So the next slide talks about the disparity studies. And this lawsuit actually threw that out. Now, mind you, significant programs, the DBE, WB, SBE, county programs, city programs, state programs, utilize the disparity study to create pathways of opportunity, set-aside programs, contracting mechanisms, right? That allow the field, one, that was their solution to level the playing field, and two, create these opportunities because it has been proven that communities of color have not had the same advantages. Hello, hello, hello. We're back live at the studio and on WFNU 94.1 Frogtown Community Radio and our YouTube channel. Imagine that. Welcome to Procurement Games Podcast and Open Conversations. I am your host, Lynn Pingle, and shortly going to introduce my co-host here, Jared Peterson. Our show is about providing a platform for small businesses to showcase their expertise, share their stories, lessons learned while discussing the challenges they face in procurement and contracting, including the barriers with opportunities and access. And we also want to share solutions that make sense and give you a better chance at putting that checkbox in that win column. Now, my co-host on this show is here with me today, Jared Peterson. Say hello, Jared.
Hello, Lynn. How are you doing today?
I am good. We got a hot topic today.
We do.
Yeah,
new
it's
hot
almost
topic.
like are we willing to do this
new
topic?
new hot topics every week.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, we're just gonna, change it up every single time. I think is what we're gonna do.
Oh, well, if I needed to introduce myself, I would be more than happy not to introduce myself. I can keep rolling if I,
Cue introduction, Jared Peterson.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Jared Peterson, CEO of Straightforward. We're a technology orchestration firm, or if you're in the construction industry, you look at us maybe as being a technology general contractor. We take issues that are in a business unit or in a company, learn about what those are, have our vendors compete for that win, and put that flip that procurement process on its head. And so that's what we do with technology services. Over at Straightforward, or make technology sourcing straightforward.
Awesome.
So I did that there.
Yeah, that's good.
You like that?
That's good. That's good. Nice and sweet. Nice and sweet.
Well, last week we forgot to tell you about what was coming up this week.
Was that your fault?
No, you kind of just glossed over my spot, and I just let you do it. So I don't know whose fault that is, but either way, we forgot to do that.
We forgot
to talk about being a little bit off script. I mean, we have an outline, but it's quite a bit off script. We're just kind of rolling with this next topic because it is one that is of concern for small and disadvantaged businesses. There's probably a lot of change coming. And so what does that mean and what does that affect us? So we're going to be a little bit off script today. We're like episode 3 now and we're already off script.
I know. It started last week, since in my script I didn't have the script that said we're going to talk about the topic we're going to talk about today. And
so I had the
updated
updated script.
Side.
So this is your fault. Are you saying this is not your fault? That you didn't provide yourself with the updated script?
Maybe that's what it was. I wrote it, and then it's like it disappeared, and then it changed when it got to your side of the fence. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
I don't know. I got some proof. I can say my script had it in it, but Anyway.
Yes. So here we are in our 3rd episode, and we are definitely going to go off script.
Yep. What we're going to talk about today is, do we really want to talk about the Ultima SBA lawsuit?
Yes. We should talk about the Ultima versus the Small Business Administration and the United States Department of Agriculture lawsuit.
Oh, we're trying to spell out our acronyms now?
Yeah, the alphabet soup that we have. Yeah, we have to. I think that's just point of clarification.
You didn't start off with what one, it's the United States Small Business Administration and the United States Department of Agriculture.
You're right. So we're just going to shorten it to Ultima versus SBA USDA lawsuit. Because, as small businesses, we always talk about having the opportunity and the platform for our voices to be heard. And Procurement Games is one of those platforms, I think. We designed this podcast to not only give the opportunity to educate and share our knowledge and our experience with procurement and contracting, but really to provide information that we believe, you and I, is important to the small business community. Mackey companies in the ecosystem, the landscape, understands the landscape really well, procurement and contracting in different industries, and we interact with, a few hundred, a few thousand, if you go global, certified small businesses. And so this is just one of those topics that, as small businesses, we should know. Most of us go day to day grinding. We keep our hyper-focused minds on our work. And sometimes when we are head down doing that work, we miss critical and detrimental things happening in the ecosystem, particularly those that will affect our business. And I believe the Ultima versus SBA USDA lawsuit is one of those detrimental instances that our small businesses need to know and really start paying attention to, because this is going to greatly affect set-aside programs that they are participating in, goals that are being set on projects that are designed specifically for certified small businesses. And not only does this affect those programs, it is also a lawsuit that challenges DEI and ESG programs in a lot of ways.
And just use an acronym and not explain it.
Yeah, so that's really what's going to be your role in here, is you're going to explain the whole landscape and all the alphabet soup that's tied to this lawsuit. And then the bottom half of this hour, we're gonna give a briefing of what's going on and such. And so I want to, I'm going to start the disclaiming that this is our opinions and our thoughts and our own interpretations. And again, we're going to encourage everybody to look into the Ultima versus SBA USDA lawsuit and draw their own conclusions, because as a small business and any business, you need to pay attention if you are engaged in procurement, contracting, DEI, and ESG. So with that said, Jared, I'm going to hand this mic over to you, and the camera's on you.
And I'm looking at what ESG is.
And okay, I can dive into ESG if you don't know what that is.
I know what DEI is. ESG, I'm like, I've heard that thrown around, but I have not bumped into that yet.
Environmental, societal, and governance.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, and we're gonna.
By the way, when you punch in ESG, diversity, there isn't an explanation of what that is.
All right. Let's just get back on here, because we got a lot to talk about.
Anyway, well, when we talk about what we've got going on in this lawsuit, before we jump into it and talk a little bit more about it, we want to level set our the audience of what the jargon you mentioned. So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. ESG is, what was that again?
Environmental, societal, and governance.
There we go, that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then really talk about what those certified small businesses are, and then highlight that process. So when we look at some of the acronyms, we just explained DEI. DEI kind of exists in what type of industries, in what areas. DEI is typically, we find that a lot of times in corporate structures, more than I find them the term inside of government structures. Government is more along the lines of small and disadvantaged business terms. ESG, where do we find ESG more?
Actually, it's sort of the replacement of the DEI, and I can kind of go into that a little later.
Is it a buzzword, or is it like a thing?
It's DEI programs are pivoting to environmental, social, and governance. And
Okay.
like I said, I'll elaborate a little bit with what they are. So in essence, diversity, equity, inclusion focused on, again, the inclusion part, making sure that the workforce is diverse, the contracting, the individuals getting contracts are also diverse. And by diverse, we mean women, veterans, communities of color, social and economically disadvantaged businesses, right? All the certifications that you're about to talk about. Environmental social governance, kind of because the focus on DEI, and there's been question as to the validity or the effectiveness of DEI. Did they actually make DEI work, or did it just create another another bump in the road, right? They're pivoting to environmental, social, and governance, and how environmental, social, and governance may perhaps be implemented is if you meet environmental, let's say a project has 30% goal, I know you're going to talk about goals, 30% goal, that 30% can be met just on environmental alone. For instance, I can put solar panels on my project and meet environmental and not meet any social goals. Social goals could be we're certified small businesses like WBE, DBE, MBE, and veterans could reside and have the opportunity to play in that field. Governance is, again, just as what you would think governance in terms of how they're implementing and working and things like that, just the governance of any program. Are they following through and such? I'm not really sure in detail what the governance component is. I know there's a lot of compliance involved and things like that, but it's really concerning with regards to some of the programs. There's advantages to either side of the fence, right? DEI has its advantages and disadvantages, but as things have diversed, like this lawsuit that's come up, it's attacking DEI, and so everybody's are kind of like, oh, the focus is no longer the DEI aspect because it's been proven to perhaps not be as effective in the private and the public sector, and so we're going to shift and see if we can do it environmentally and socially and things like that. So that's sort of the high level. Again, everybody do their research because this is entirely a different model that we're working off of post this lawsuit.
Yeah, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a small business trying to look at this stuff and trying to figure this out. So that's my disclaimer. I do not play a lawyer on TV. I don't even play one on TV. But what we're looking at here is how do we, as small businesses, can stay ahead of possible changes and what that means. And so us as small businesses talk about that. Certified small businesses, the Small Business Administration sets out those rules. That's actually by a line item. There's what's called a NICS code. A NICS code is the type of business that you exist in. And that business revenue ends up being a earmarker of whether you're a small business or you are everybody else, right? So, and that number kind of has that delineation. And then when we get into certified small businesses who are diverse, we're talking about maybe women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. Those are socioeconomic components that go into that. So Small Business Administration kind of sets those rules. Other administrations also look at, so especially for Department of Transportation, they're looking at DBE and set some of those rules as well. So.
And so when we talk about the term socioeconomic, can you elaborate a little bit about what that means? Because, is that a buzzword that everybody uses like paradigm? Because maybe some of our audience don't know what a socioeconomic definition is.
Sure. Yeah, so let's start with the acronyms then. Let's roll with WBE, a woman business enterprise. That's what a WBE is. So it's a business that's owned by a woman, or a minority business enterprise, an MBE. And then there's VBE, VBSO. There's a bunch of acronyms around veterans, but they're businesses that are owned by a veteran. Each one of them primarily is owned, majority controlled by one of those socioeconomic factors. Why is it a socioeconomic factor? Well, traditionally women have not had the access to the business opportunities. Minorities traditionally have not had that, and veterans as well. The encouragement of them in order to get into business as well. They have not also traditionally had the access to business opportunities to make their businesses work. That's been shown and proven over and over and over again by disparity study after disparity study. And it shows that it was necessary in order to create these socioeconomic factors to go ahead and certify a business is actually controlled by a woman, a minority, or a veteran in order to make sure that the dollars were not being spent by a company that was not actually controlled by somebody who is of those socioeconomic factors. So there's a lot of jargon in that. But a disadvantaged business enterprise is majority controlled, proven, vetted small business underneath the SBA guidelines for revenue by a person who is proven to have a socioeconomic factor that has traditionally had a problem having full and equal opportunity to business opportunities.
Absolutely, and it was
That was
designed.
a lot of information. I feel weird about how much stuff just rolled out of my tongue. That's weird.
That's okay. That's okay. And so when we think about the economic challenges that is faced by these certified small businesses, what are the processes that they must go through? You talked about the revenue cap and things like that. What are some of the processes in order to get vetted? And let's take the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program that's run under the United States Department of Transportation. You like that, USDOT?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then that each state has its own municipality, a certified unification certification program. That
UCP.
The UCP. So in Minnesota, it's the MIN UCP. In Nevada, it'd be the NV UCP. And so, what do these certifying agencies do as it relates to the highway heavy projects? How about that?
Yeah, in order to get certified as a DBE, so that's the collective, 3 different ones, so MBE, WBE, and veteran-owned, VBE. Those 3 acronyms fall under that DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. All 3 of those go up into that. So in order to get qualified for that, or to get certified for that, you sit down with a government agency, a government representative comes out, examines your bylaws, examines your corporate structure, and takes your tax returns every year in order to make sure that, first and foremost, you fall under your SBA guidelines for a small business, and that the business itself is owned and operated by a person of color, a woman, or a veteran. And that it is not a large corporation or somebody who doesn't qualify for those certifications as part of that business. So you have a lot of oversight and checks and balances to make sure that this small and disadvantaged business is actually the small and disadvantaged business that is certified. So it's a government certification. It really is a government. It's not easy to get, but if you qualify, you can get it.
Absolutely, and there's obviously advantages to being a certified small businesses and such. So talk to me about set-aside programs. What are they?
Set-aside programs are programs that allow for those who have traditionally had not the full open economic opportunities, whether that's banking, whether that's the social, whether that is any numerous amount of factors that have shown to be an issue for these small disadvantaged businesses to get into business. They traditionally are set up in order to help them and assist them by carving out things that they can do. So a lot of times these small businesses are not able to handle hundreds of millions of dollar project. What they are is normally done in small increments. So take for instance a maintenance contract with MnDOT. The roads need to be cleaned or mowed or whatever the case is. A small and disadvantaged business could take that $10,000 project to go mow this apron or whatever the case is. To do that, well, now we can, instead of the large business taking that, the entity can now give that to a small business. And so that's that kind of set-aside program to say, hey, we're going to take these opportunities and give them to small businesses because we can do that. It's not something that we need to only have large businesses take on. So there's that, and then there's other ones that are where they set goals as participation. So here's a large $100 million project. How much of that project can go to small disadvantaged businesses in order to make sure that they're included inside of those dollars?
And one of the reasons why a set-aside program exists is really to provide that level playing field for these businesses and to promote participation in the market, right? It's one of those things where I always talk about it, right? You strive to be Google, but right now,
I aspire
to be Google. But at this moment in time, I am not there yet. And so I can't compete. I can't be in the same bucket as Google. Google is a gazillionaire, and I am a 100,000 performer, right? And so any capacity or capability, comparing Google over Mackey Company, Google's going to get picked, hands down. And so the idea with set-aside programs is, again, You have to meet certain criteria, you have to comply with contracting requirements, but more importantly, it was designed to level the playing field so that you are competing with those that are just like you in the same. So it's still a competitive process in that program. Okay, tell me a little bit about contract mechanisms. I know you mentioned a little bit about MnDOT's negotiated contracts.
All right. Contract mechanisms. This is how government flows money. So this is the way government can authorize money to move out of its bank accounts into your bank account. And so how they do that is a mechanism, a contract vehicle or the like, right? So when we look at a negotiated maintenance contract through, say, MnDOT, what they're looking at is small and disadvantaged businesses who can take on that project. It's typically under a certain dollar amount, and it can change by entity. And then they also change throughout the year, wherever I don't know how to say that exactly, but they can change the requirements, but it does vary by entity. So in the case of like say MnDOT, you have direct select, you have equity select, you have these other thresholds where they're saying, hey, at $25,000 or less, you can go ahead and procure that from an equity select partner or supplier. At $50,000 or $100,000, you can go ahead and buy it from this type of supplier without having to go to. It makes it easier on the business unit to go ahead and procure those services, but you're also taking, if you do it in a small business lens, now you can go ahead and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and make small businesses part of that overall pool, and you can pick from these businesses to go ahead and do this type of work in that under 25K up to 100,000K, or from 100,000 to 250,000. Each of those contract mechanisms are available for different sized small businesses.
Sure.
Did I do that justice?
Yep, you did.
Because I felt like I had a whole lot of stuff going on there that I'm not, I know, I understand, but.
No, and you said it right. When you think about set aside programs and then these contracting mechanisms that are used, again, it's really a purchasing policy of a government agency, and really even the private sector could set this up. You can have procurements under 5,000, could be a purchase card program, right? You can have programs under 10 grand, under 50,000, and then anything greater. Right, so Minnesota Department of Transportation, you talked about the negotiated maintenance contracts. A lot of small businesses are designed to compete in that realm. Even the restrictions of minimal bid requirements, like we have to have 3 bids in order to consider, or minimum 2 bids. The scopes are clearer because they've been carved out. They're not 1,500 pages, but rather maybe 10 to 15 pages. So there's an advantage to some of these contracting mechanisms as it relates to, again, the language of leveling that playing field, right? And again, folks, if you're interested, Jared and I are in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities area. We talk a lot about the Minnesota government agencies and such. Feel free to go to the Department of Administration's website to learn more about the contracting opportunities and the mechanisms that are used that agency buyers utilize as it relates to contracts, because almost all of them have some type of set aside or contracting mechanism that we are talking about. So.
Did we set the playing field? Did we set the stage already? Did we do enough there? Do we need to go back and talk about something? Did we miss something?
As it relates to what we're going to introduce at the bottom half of the hour, I don't think so. Again, the field has been set, right? The field has been set, and it is supposed to be level.
We have end zones, we have out of bounds, we have hash marks, we've got 10-yard lines that are just painted out.
So it's not just the
logos we got logos painted at the center field and in both end zones.
Spelled correctly, not chefs.
We've not. We have goalposts that are not in the middle of the field anymore. They're at the ends, so they don't run into them.
That's
those
right.
kinds of things.
That's
We've figured out that people run into those poles, and now we should move them out a ways away so that we're not running into those in the middle of a game. Those kinds of things.
That's right.
Okay.
And so
The field has been
the
set.
field,
Players are starting to
they
take
say.
the field at this point.
yeah, the field,
Or have
as
been on
they
the
say.
field.
Yeah, the field, as they say, has been set. Now,
Did groundskeepers mow the lawn yet?
not yet, we're not there yet.
Okay.
So, it's an artificial turf.
Oh.
So the field has been set. It has been set. So let me go back to some of the certification programs. So the DBE program, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, dates back to like the 1984, 1985. And it was originally set by the U.S. Department of Transportation, who has one of the highest budget items next to the Department of Defense, because the U.S. DOT is responsible for transportation, highways, byways, and bridges, right? And so they noticed that there was an opportunity for communities of color and women and those that are economically and socially disadvantaged to partake in this $1 billion budget that they put out every single year, right? Of late, 2-3 years ago, we got the infrastructure bill. You know, Minnesota's getting $6 billion, I think, and it's $1 trillion budget item that's going to be exercised over the next 5 to 10 years in every single state, right? So, you know, look it up and see how much your state is getting for the infrastructure bill. I say that because when the DBE program was created, there was an understanding in labor that there was a lot of communities of color, women, economically and socially disadvantaged, that could actually work and engage in the Department of Transportation's activities, right? And so they created the DBE program and such. And so the DBE program was implemented. It has had, it stumbled a little bit there. They had to refine the rules and regulations and so on and so forth.
Move the goalpost from at the end of the end zone, move it to the actual out of bounds, so you don't run into them anymore.
Sure.
They've refined the
They've refined the process, right? And so here's the, again, fact check, y'all, go do your own research. The DBE program is designed for minorities and women and economically and socially disadvantaged. I keep repeating this because in this program, our non-minority counterparts have succeeded to a tune of somewhere between 94 to 96% of the contracts go to our non-minority counterparts, and the rest go to communities of color. So I want you to just level set with that, because that was the foundation and continues to be the reason why disparity studies, these are studies to determine if there is an economically, there's a reason why communities of color or other certified small businesses are not getting a piece of the pie. Okay, and that's what the disparity studies is, and it shows the links, and the disparity studies connects what the business development services are needed by certified small businesses, what technical assistance is needed, and so on. So some of the programs that is in a lot of our cities, states, and counties stem from a disparity study to help level set this playing field and right past historical discrimination. Okay, so that was the foundation, and it's coming up, and that's why this lawsuit is coming about, that the level setting may not have been executed accordingly. So that hopefully will level set and explain some of the things that we're about to talk about, and then we can jump into the SBA and the Ultima SBA USDA lawsuit.
Well, before we do all of that, we are broadcasting also live on WFNU 94.1 Community Radio here in Frogtown, St. Paul. You know, I'm talking.
You're showing
I'm
me.
showing you. That's not really what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be going this way.
There you go.
I'll hit that button. But we're also broadcasting on WFNU 94.1 FM here in St. Paul, Frogtown Community Radio. And so we have to pause for that station identification and also to let you know about that. So before we shift into our next topic for the day, WFNU is a volunteer-run radio station made up of many different community voices. Each program expresses one aspect of this diversity and is not the view of WFNU or Frogtown tuned in as a whole. WFNU is a local nonprofit that provides meaningful 24/7 broadcasting to the Frogtown community in St. Paul, Minnesota. Please consider donating and supporting the station so it can continue its work of being Frogtown's voice. Each donation to WFNU 94.1 FM is 100% tax deductible. You can donate at WFNU.org by clicking donate. All right, we've level set, we've disclaimed the radio station, we've had that in there. We offered a plug for a donation. We now can move to this next topic. Look at that.
That's a good one.
What am I doing next? Did I miss another cue?
Yeah.
I was supposed to open this, and then I was supposed to add. Okay.
It's okay.
Moving on to the, now we need to disclaim our show. Was that what I'm supposed to
That's
do?
what
That
you're
was
supposed
an
to
important thing I'm supposed to do
Yes,
here?
yes,
All right.
yes.
What we're about to present here is our own interpretations and our own discussion that we've had, our own opinions based on the research we've done. We've reviewed case briefs, articles, documents, opinions, and those in the legal realm, but drew our own conclusions. So we encourage everyone to do their own research and understand what is going on, draw on their own conclusions, and if willing, comment and share your thoughts on this topic and whatever else we got going on.
Yep.
Insights at procurementgames.us.
You got it. You got it.
Add comments and YouTube, everywhere else. Tell people.
Send us emails, and have this conversation. And we talk about the fear of retaliation quite a bit, right? And so a lot of our listeners and even our participants don't even want to comment or share. They'll send us private emails because they don't want to be identified as going against the institution. Because when you go against the institution, you have a risk of being blacklisted, right? For lack of a better term. And it's not really an appropriate term nowadays in terms of how to say that, but there's no other way around it, right? You are put on a list as a challenging individual to work with, or whatever it is, or simply because you said something against the institution. And a lot of our listeners and our, hopefully, our audience don't dissuade from that. And so I want to kind of dive a little bit in terms of how we got into this. And now I'm going to give you the backstory, right? I was aware of this lawsuit, which was filed back in March of 2020, and had been tracking it for quite some time. When the decision was handed down by the courts in August 2023, it really, really lit up my attention even more. And when the SBA began changing its 8A program as a result of this lawsuit, I reached out to a group of other certified small businesses who I thought, hey, this might be something you would be concerned about, right? I wanted to bring it to their attention. Now, folks, I sit as a chair for the Business Review Council in the City of St. Paul. I was a commissioner for Human Rights, Equal Equity Opportunity for the City of St. Paul. Hero. Yep. I've sat in different chairs. I've been in leadership roles and things like that. And I'd like to say I have a following because of the small businesses that I assist, that attend my classes, I give business technical assistance to. And when this was brought to my attention, and it came across, it instantly just gave me red flags. And I wasn't sure how to really articulate this without seeming like an angry person or an upset person. And what we really wanted to do was really come up with a solution and bring awareness to what this is about. And so in November 2023, this group of businesses hosted a convening and invited certified small businesses. And in this meeting, about 25 of us showed up. And we weren't angry. We weren't ready to, storm the castle with pitchforks and everything. And in the room with us were also government agencies who had attended, not just to learn about the lawsuit, but to get a vibe of what these small businesses are thinking. Folks, I want to let you know that the government agencies have known about this lawsuit and the results of this lawsuit since it came down, perhaps in July, August, September. All right? Not a lot of certified small businesses, forget certified. All small businesses are aware of this, and that's why we're bringing this up. And so in this convening, we presented an overview again, our interpretation, language that we copied and paste. We have resources that we're going to share with you to make your research easier so that you can understand where this conversation is coming from. Now, I know our listeners on WFNU are not actually seeing this presentation and such, so we encourage you to switch over to our YouTube channel, Procurement Games, shoot us an email, and then you'll see exactly what the key points that we're talking about today. So with that said.
And when we're looking at this, it's about what do you know that's going to change, right? As your business, if you're a certified small business, if you're a diverse business, certified diverse small business, there's likely changes coming. And so understanding what changes are coming before they're going to happen puts you in that column for hopefully a win in the future when stuff starts changing.
And this will hopefully, if you're listening, hopefully inspire you to go talk to your procurement officers, to your contracting officers. Begin the conversation and come up with a solution that makes sense for us, all right? That's really what this is about. We want to inform you about what's going on, but we encourage you to do your research. So with that said, let me fire away here because we've got a little bit over 20 minutes to talk about. The lawsuits was back in March of 2020, I believe, and it was filed. And the organization that filed against it is an organization called Ultima, who is a small business that provides administrative and technical support services. They've worked with the USDA, have competed for several federal services contract with the USDA. They've earned approximately $37 million since 2015. In IDIQ contracts.
And that's 37 million isn't all of their revenue, right? That was what their 37 million was from the USDA. That was the money that they've received through the IDIQ that they had with the USDA.
I believe that is correct. That is just exclusively government contracts, let's just call it.
Yeah, but they would have had other contracts. And
they may have had other contracts, private contracts, and everything else. What that number is, I do not recall seeing. So again, backtrack, fact check. But I do not recall seeing what their private contracts were. I just recall seeing that they had earned approximately $37 million in 2015 contracts with the USDA.
From 2015 to 2020 or so. Right?
I believe
that was
so.
during a span of time.
I believe so. I don't recall either, but yes, I believe it was since 2015 to the lawsuit date. The study by SBA demonstrated that if the IDIQ contract, when it was depleted and SBA redirected it to the 8A program, which is a contract set aside 8A program for small businesses, that Ultima would experience an adverse revenue loss. They'd lose business, which makes sense, right? The contract was taken away from them.
So the IDIQ was moving from a straight up IDIQ open procurement. They're going to now make this IDIQ an 8A IDIQ. Meaning a 8A.
Instead of an open contract availability, they were going to create a set aside for that particular contract.
They're going to move it to certified small businesses, and SBA that Ultima would not have qualified for underneath.
Perhaps
that
was the
they would not have qualified for 8A.
That was
whatever
Ultima's,
reason they would not have qualified.
That was Ultima's interpretation that they may or may not have qualified there. And again, it does not matter that Ultima might not otherwise qualify for the 8A program because the 8A program uses a rebuttable presumption, which is the foundation of this lawsuit. The rebuttable presumption removed because the playing field in qualifying for the 8A program would be leveled. Okay, so whatever the classification of Ultima is, whatever the decision SBA made to move this IDIQ from open contract to set aside program, it's buried in the weeds of this lawsuit. Again, simply providing you an overview of what we interpret Ultima's background to be. All right.
And then let's roll back to the 8A program, because I don't think we elaborated on that at all before our disclaimers. What is our 8A program, SBA 8A program? Could you help us out with that? And you're going to look it up, huh? To make sure you get the wording correct.
Yep,
I have my interpretation.
Yep. So the 8A program, by definition, is it's a business development program, right? And it was designed to assist socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses, right? The program offers training, it has classes with local nonprofits that offer business development. They have their own curriculum that they promote and teach. And there's a sunrise and a sunset. You get in the program, and I think you're in 8-9 years, and then you, what I say, graduate for the program. And that's essentially what the 8A program is. Again, visit sba.gov for specific information about 8A program. But at this time, again, we'll talk about we'll talk about how things have had to shift with the 8A program. The whole purpose of it is to, again, it's a business development tool with contract opportunities, right? And what it does is it takes away the big guys and separates the little guys so that they have their own fair share of contract dollars available exclusively to them. You can't just apply for 8A and not attend any of the classes. It is an actual program. So you got to go through the motions to qualify. You got to go through the motions of education and build your network, look for opportunities. It is still a competitive program. And you, as a small business, I always advise, be strategic before you become an 8A. Because if you don't have capacity and capability, you ain't ready, you're going to make a fool of yourself. And it's a waste of time and energy because you only have that 8 to 9 year window. And
you don't get another shot at it.
And yes, it's one and done.
It follows the person, right? Not the business, it follows the person, right? Is that how I understand that?
Yeah. And so that's the critical component is, again, any of these certified programs, the DBE, MBE, WBE, VET, you do not need it to bid a government contract. You do not need it. It's only advantageous if there are goals to a contract or set-asides to a contract that carves out specifically for the socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, like your women, minority, veteran, and so on. Okay? So that's what we want to make clear and such. Okay, let's jump to this next slide. So what happened in the lawsuit and what the findings were is that the Small Business Administration did not identify a specific instance of discrimination, that they did not have a process in place to determine social disadvantage of their participants, that SBA's use of the rebuttable presumption for certain groups in the 8A program discriminated on the basis of race, and that it was not justified. There were disparity studies that were thrown out, and the goals that were not in place could not be measured because they did not exist, right? And so let's sit a little bit about the use of rebuttable presumption for certain groups in the 8A program discriminated on the basis of race. The hard part about this is really like trying to interpret and understand what rebuttable presumption means. Again, neither Jared and I are lawyers. We may be interpreting this wrong. This is why this is an opinion. This is why this is a conversation. We're not trying to influence anyone's thinking. I can't tell you enough. Please research. We have the links here in terms of where we got this information.
This particular was derived from casetext.com.
Yeah. And these are exact case studies that, the actual case that transpired. Sorry, I've got to switch screens here so that I know exactly what I'm looking at and such. And so, pardon me as I shift. There was a lot of different things that the SBA did not do, and that rebuttable presumption is really the key as it relates to how this moved forward. So let's go to the next slide. So again, filed March 2020 by Ultima, and it was heard in August 2023, maybe even July of 2023. And basically it talked about race discrimination as a violation of the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution, right? The use of SBA's rebuttable presumption does not apply. Rebuttable presumption, and I'm just reading this right off the text, rebuttable presumption assumes, unless there is evidence that members of a certain racial or ethnic groups qualify as social disadvantage within the meaning of the 8A program requirements. Okay? So, there were several experts coming in and out in this lawsuit. It's really a lengthy lawsuit case file. Experts countered each other, studies that minorities have a significant disadvantage of contracting, and that when they participated in the 8A program, their chances went up by 37%. That's phenomenal, right? So you go into an 8A program, you 37%. I'd be happy with 10, right? But the 8A program is able to prove that minorities, communities of color, women, and such, their chances improved by being in the 8A program by 37%. However, because of the rebuttable presumption, you had to prove that there was evidence of a socially disadvantaged factor as a participant in there. There was an SBA employee that confirmed that, quote, "There's no process for a third party to question someone's social disadvantage as part of the application process. Therein lies the rub."
That's what it seems like the court took to say that this was the problem with the program.
Yeah. And so I'll sit here for a second, because basically what I interpreted is this. Perhaps SBA looked at all the communities of color and said, hey, you're African American, you're automatically socially, economically disadvantaged, because there's been studies that say you can't walk into a bank. Hey, Asian American, you're also economic social advantage. Native American, Pacific Islanders, and so on and so forth. You are all socially, economically disadvantaged. Whether I proved that you were socially or economically disadvantaged is another thing. So there was some, quote, automatic categorization. Is that the right word?
Categorization. Man, that does
that word.
I knew the word. I just couldn't get it to roll off the tongue.
Categorization.
Yeah,
okay.
Categorization.
Yeah, categorization. Perhaps there were some assumptions, right? There was assumptions that were made that if you were a person of color, if you were a woman, if you were a veteran, that you are automatically socially disadvantaged. Now, a lot of that is historically based on the disparity studies that independent consultants brought forward to prove that there is a disparity, right? So time and time again, there's been a proof that this has transpired, right? Okay. So the next slide talks about the disparity studies. And this lawsuit actually threw that out. Now, mind you, significant programs, the DBE, WBE, SBE, county programs, city programs, state programs, utilize the disparity study to create pathways of opportunity, set-aside programs, contracting mechanisms, right? That allow the field, one, that was their solution to level the playing field, and two, create these opportunities, because it has been proven that communities of color have not had the same advantages. Where it went wrong, whereas that SBA did not identify a specific instance of discrimination. They didn't say, Lynn, you're an Asian woman, you're Asian, and you're a woman, and your experience of not winning contracts, of not being able to walk into a bank to get a loan, of not having the right relationships, not having the right resources, I didn't prove that. I didn't provide that explanation. I didn't provide documentation that I am, one, socially economic disadvantaged because I don't have the opportunities that my non-minority counterpart has, or two, I don't have the wherewithal, right? The economic part, I don't have the working capital and I can't go to a bank, right? So there was no individual documentation. Again, folks, we are reading it and we're interpreting it in this manner. This does not mean that's what came out of whatever, but this is what we are seeing and what we're understanding to be. Again, we go back to the reliance on the disparity studies faced by minority business owners nationally, and they use that as a sufficient means to justify the use of presumption, rebuttable presumption, that certain minorities are socially disadvantaged. Quote, in an effort to alleviate the effects of social discrimination is not a compelling interest. That's what came out of it. They said it wasn't enough. Folks, it wasn't enough that studies upon studies upon studies interviews with other MBEs to determine if they were winning or they were losing, it wasn't enough. It was thrown out. Okay? That the reliance on national statistics shows societal discrimination. Obviously, we know that. But it still wasn't specific. And the regulation says you got to provide specific instances. And we believe that's where SBA faltered, right? Lastly, the Department of Justice and the Department of Commerce were also called, and they reported and demonstrated evidence of discriminatory barriers that impede minority business owners. It wasn't enough. Jared, it wasn't enough. And if you think about how we first started in this industry, I started in 2014 and started my company, and I was encouraged to become certified, that I could have potential advantage, and I was encouraged that I had a shot. And I knew what my discriminatory challenges were. I knew what my deficiencies were as an organization, and I had to seek to find opportunity. You did the same, because that's how you and I connected. You came to one of my classes. I was contracted by the Minnesota Department of Transportation to start a small business resource center to help any DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise, which is women, minorities, veterans, economically and socially disadvantaged businesses. Really, any small business were coming to the Small Business Resource Center to learn about opportunities, contracting, and how to win. They attended project and construction management classes, business development, capability statement, and so on. I was one of those programs that provided that assistance because the Department of Transportation, based on the disparity study, like all cities, counties, and state programs, wanted to level the playing field. Folks, the intent was there. The intent to help us was there. This lawsuit flipped all of that intent on its head. Lynn's opinion doesn't matter. Okay? It is changing how things are being executed. So let's go to this next slide. And again, I'm still saying with a lawsuit. They pointed out the lack of goals. If you don't have a goal, there's no measurement that past discrimination is remedied, right? So when we think about the DBE program, US DOT's federal program, they actually set goals. Every single state, with regards to highway heavy, has a goal on a project. Almost all projects. Let me disclaim that. Almost all projects have goals. There's a process before you can determine if a project has goals. The United States Department of Agriculture admits that it does not maintain any goals for the 8A program. If you're 8A, you're in. They don't say, hey, 10% must go to 8A, making that up. They just simply say, we don't maintain them. The SBA admitted that it does not require any of its agencies to have goals for the 8A program. So now you're looking at monitoring and compliance. That's what they're nailing in this lawsuit, right? They did not examine whether any racial group is underrepresented in a particular industry relevant to a specific contract in the 8A. You and I talked about the Department of Labor not tracking race. And if they tracked race, they would clearly see the discrepancy,
and
right?
There's few departments that track gender. That was in one of the things that we saw in our Rochester study.
Yes.
There's very few that there's a couple of them, like in the medical field, I saw that tracked gender, but none of them tracked race.
Right.
And there's hundreds of departments that maintain certifications for stuff.
So if you're not tracking any of these statistics via industry, then this is understandable, right? This is kind of their point, right? You didn't track it, you're in the 8A program, you didn't really, you just kind of clumped everybody together and called them discriminated upon, socially, economically, right? And without stated goals for the 8A program or an understanding of whether certain minorities are underrepresented, the SBA cannot measure the utilization of the rebuttable presumption, which is, again, tied to social economic. And if you're not measuring it, how are you curing past racial discrimination, right?
And I should say the Department of Labor does a lot of construction certification, but departments across the state of Minnesota
may not.
Well, they don't do construction specifically or work that specifically. However, you got the veterinary one, and all these other certifications in industry.
The physical therapists, all
the doctors, lawyers, everybody, all the departments that track all of these industries in general. In the state of Minnesota, didn't see any of them that had race. So we're coming up on 54 minutes.
Holy cow, we haven't even gone to anything. Okay, so let's quickly wrap up. Okay, so we are in where we sit today with the 8A program. You want to go down one more slide? Okay, so where we sit today. After we provided you the findings, right? This is the edict that came down that proved why the 8A program was not doing what it was supposed to do. And this is, I believe, why, for lack of a better term, they lost the lawsuit, right? This lawsuit shut down the 8A program. As of today, I do not believe that the SBA is accepting applications. I believe the program is temporarily suspended. It is not sure, it's not clear as to when those applications are going to be restarted again. They're probably going to have to revamp it. They're going to have to revamp how they look at it and how they're going to process it, because obviously they had an employee testify that they have no measures of vetting, nothing to vet. Social economic business. All pending and future 8A awards are, including sole source, are going to have to be affirmed to determine if there are any qualified applicants that are socially disadvantaged business owners who can meet it.
What does that mean? We've talked with a couple people about what that has meant for them. What has that been? What's their experience?
So this is the third part, right? So existing 8A certified small businesses has to write a narrative on their social disadvantage. They got to explain why they belong in the program. If you're admitted before the August 2016, you probably don't need to do a narrative. But if you're admitted after, again, please go to the SBA site if you're an 8A program to make sure you pay attention to what you need to do. If you were admitted based on the rebuttable presumption or post-August 2016, you will need to submit a social disadvantage narrative. We have a certified small business owner that has submitted, I think they are in their third, fourth, if not fifth rebuttal narrative. Explaining why they are socially disadvantaged, and they're still revising. The challenge with this, folks, is there is no metric. It is subjective. If I don't think your explanation is good enough, then you're going to have to rewrite it over and over and over again. And then eventually, I don't know how many drafts you're going to have to submit to determine if you qualify or not. They're going to kick you out of the program if it's not sufficient. I have yet to see what the metrics are to determine the validity of what your narrative, what is a good narrative to make sure you can stay in the 8A program. I haven't seen it. I've looked all over 8A. It's still a subjective thing, and that's scary, right? They're stopping the use of the 8A program in one particular NICS code. So if you have the Administrative and Technical Support Industry NICS code, 8A program is no longer allowed in that particular NICS code, and that NICS code is what Ultima used to gain access. There are multiple conversations occurring all over, and here are just some of the organizations that have had this discussion and such. And so I think that gives a great overview of where we are today. What's scary about this thing, folks, is that again, Lynn's words, Lynn's interpretation, Lynn's opinion doesn't matter. They're removing race as a factor for consideration in set-aside programs. And if they can remove race, they can remove gender, they can remove everything else, and this then becomes an uneven playing field. And we are once again competing with the big guys. Now, you could argue, well, why don't you just let the best person bid, the lowest bid wins, and so on and so forth. That's awesome in theory, right? That's awesome in theory. But let me tell you, We do not. We, as communities of color, women, veterans, and so on, we cannot walk into Wells Fargo Bank and get qualified today the way other people are. Please look at the studies. Please demand from your city, county, and state how many contracts have minorities, women, veterans, and everything as it relates to the dollars that they spend, and make a comparison to our non-minority counterparts to see who is winning. Then start asking questions. Start asking questions. This is the only way you're going to get educated in the process of procurement and contracting, so you can position yourself to win. That's what this is about. All right. I see you cueing me to say it's time to go.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right. Final thoughts in 10.
Well, you know, we know changes are coming, and who knows, maybe it was time for a change, you know, in the way the programs work. And obviously there was problems with compliance. So, you know, the question is, what are those changes going to be, and how do you get ahead of it as a small disadvantaged business so that you're ready for those changes? So that's what I'm glad that we're having the conversation about what this case means to us as small and disadvantaged businesses.
Absolutely. I hope everyone, again, found this information helpful and useful. Feel free to reach out to us by commenting below or emailing us at insights@procurementgames.us. Again, what we've expressed here is our own interpretation, our own opinions. We're not even the messenger. We're just relaying information. Please comment, like, share below. We'll send you the links. You'll have copies of the references in which we pulled this information from. So let me close by saying this, folks. Go after that low-hanging fruit, but always remember to look up. At the entire tree filled with fruit about to ripen. Learn, strategize, and collaborate for the win, because we can do more together than we can do ourselves. So until next time, y'all, thanks for tuning in. Jared and Lynn out.